different changes that is going on, that is happening. One of the things that we're going to be talking about today that I've just recently added to the agenda is we're going to be taking a vote to talk about whether, as I talked about last quarter, whether we want to start hearing programming requests in here, or if we want to continue to have more SUA meetings, so that way we can have a separate entity where students can go and talk about what requests they want to talk about. So I will be holding a straw poll vote today. Based on that straw poll vote, I will then decide to either move forward or not with that. We have a very exciting quarter. We're going to be hosting a few events, and there's an email coming out to y'all tomorrow morning. I found this new app that can actually schedule emails to actually be sent out. So tomorrow morning you should get an email with a whole bunch of list of updates. But thank you for being here. I appreciate y'all, and let's have a great spring quarter. Right?
Thank you all for being here. We're going to start with roll call. The question for today is, what is your goal for this quarter? Like, what is your personal goal for this quarter? Ayo?
Hi, I'm Ayo. My goal is to pass classes.
Sit loud. Okay. Devon?
To go to sleep as much as possible and not leave my bed. That sounds fun.
Lauren?
Make it through.
Enrique?
Graduate.
Bella?
Tired.
Okay. Natasha? What is your goal for this quarter?
Oh, my goal.
Sorry to interrupt. Would y'all be more comfortable seated? I can try and throw out some couches. I can
Yeah, there's couches over here. There's couches over here. Excuse me.
Sorry about the quick interruption.
Yo?
Natasha, if you'd like to share your goal for this quarter.
Oh, I said to survive.
To survive. Sorry about that. Thank you. Cameron?
Do more.
Ryan?
Yeah, pass my classes like everyone else.
Alicia? Alexandrina?
Get out these.
Lee?
To finish up and graduate at the end of the school year.
Tommy?
Not for myself, not for
Jonathan? Saul? Or Shivika? Claudia? Sila?
My goal is to pass all my classes.
Regina?
Stop eating pizza and focus on something.
Soma?
Go to the beach as much as possible if it's sunny.
Not get too stressed.
Amy? Venkatesh?
To be more focused and get better grades last time.
Emma?
To focus on caring for myself a little bit more and time management.
Joshua?
To get my sleep schedule more.
Zol? Moshi?
To come to more meetings.
Anna?
Come earlier.
Owen? Michelle? Jessica?
I'm her alternate.
Oh, cool.
Hi, my name is Brittany, and I just want to get my shirt done.
And then, is that one T, two T's?
2 T's.
Taryn? Francisco? Chase? Stefan?
Oh, listen, learn, be a better person, get this constitution passed.
Akatu?
I had a really bad roommate last quarter, and I just moved, so my goal is to be friends with my roommates.
Nate?
Let's get through it.
Noe? Zayu? Robert? Shara? Nalia, would you like to stay for the rest of the meeting or just the engaging education part? Either is fine.
Getting education part.
Okay. Do you want to share your goal or do you want to pass? Totally your call. Okay. Kayla? Aslan?
Spend a little less time on that.
Zampi? David?
To improve my emotional well-being.
Does anybody else want to share their goals for the quarter? Cool. Alright. So next we have the approval of the agenda. This is the agenda. I added this change because this was requested before the meetings. Are there any motions regarding the agenda? Yes.
It's the wrong date and the wrong order.
Yes.
Motion to move SUA constitutional amendment to the bottom of that whole business part, just because I feel like it would be less contentious than the other ones.
Okay.
Objection.
Or I mean, that's gonna be more contentious than the other ones, so it's gonna take longer to debate it.
We don't have a second. So, motion by Cameron to move the vote on sponsorship SUA constitutional amendment line to after the REACH Act,
Yeah.
to after the REACH Act resolution vote. Is there a second on that? Second by Venkatesh. Are there any objections?
Objection.
Objection by David. Do you care to state your objection?
Yeah, due to the time constraints on this amendment, I believe that it's crucial, since this is the last time to pass it, I think that it's crucial that we address this and make sure it gets done. And I fear, especially given the issues that we've had with quorum recently, that if we move it down the agenda, we may lose the chance to pass it.
Alright, is there any discussion on this? Yes.
If it's not contentious, it'll take a minute to pass. If it is contentious, it'll be addressed before we lose quorum. That's my hope with where it is currently on the agenda.
Alright, seeing no further comments, we'll be moving into a vote. All those in favor of moving vote on sponsorship SUA constitutional amendment to below the REACH Act resolution vote? One in favor, how many opposed? Opposed. The motion doesn't pass. Are there any other motions regarding tonight's agenda? Yes, Cameron?
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve tonight's agenda by Cameron, second by Emma. Are there any objections? Alright, seeing none, the motion is passed. We approve tonight's agenda. We'll now be moving into approval of previous week's minutes. When going back through the voice recording for last week's minutes, I realized we didn't have quorum at any point last week. So there aren't minutes because they're like a formal document from formal meetings. Since we don't have quorum, we don't have a formal meeting. However, I'm working on some notes from the meeting, including the presentations that we had, and we'll be sending those out like within the next few days on the website within the next few days by Wednesday night. So we're going into the approval of the minutes from the 12. Hold on, I'm sorry. The minutes from the 5th, which are in the folder from the 12th.
Motion to approve.
These are those minutes. I have a motion to approve the minutes from March 5th, 2019 by David, second by Akati. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the motion passes. We'll be now moving to announcements and public comments. However, we could also, depending on if you all want to approve this or not, we can, I apologize for not mentioning this when we were going over the agenda. I personally recommend putting them after the engaging education presentation because there's a lot of people here that, correct me if I'm wrong, y'all would like to go home as soon as possible, right? So do you all have any interest in hearing the announcements at all?
We can move that. I'm sorry. Motion to move public comments until after East Week.
Okay. I have a motion by Enrique to move announce public comments after E squared, second by Stefan. Are there any objections? Alright, seeing none, you all have the floor.
So first of all, we're just going to introduce ourselves. My name is DJ. I'm a second year Oaks affiliate, and I'm a representative from East Square. One of the coordinators from the other program, which is connected to engaging education.
I'm Lara, using pronouns. I am the graphic designer and concept artist.
Hey y'all, my name is Bernard. My pronouns are he and his. I'm a 4th year. I'm also chair of Engaging Education. I also want to introduce all the folks that came here to support us. They're part of all the folks that have endorsed us and have really supported us throughout this whole campaign. Yeah, I'll pass them on to you.
Cool. If I could just real quick get a raise of hands of how many people for Engaging Education or East Square. Awesome. Yeah, so a lot of people know about it, right? By the way, it's also located right above the bike coupe and the Redwood Lounge, which is located in the quarry. That's where East Square is at. As far as the space, it's an outreach and retention center, and it serves various communities on campus, and it has various programs to do that. Particularly with our presentation today, we want to focus on our outreach programs, the yield programs known as the SIO programs, the SIO yield programs, and that would include the orderly program, the destination higher education program, and step forward.
So going into it, I know we have shared values here. We are a student-ran, student-led center, and y'all are a student-governed center. We just want to make sure that our values are in line because we're here as folks, as students. Here, we need to voice the concerns of students here. So our center does work very much predominantly with underrepresented, historically under-researched communities, and we really fight to make sure that these voices of the students and the resources and the ways that they can advocate are here on campus.
Yeah, and we really wanted to have a dialogue and to introduce, or really talk about an issue that all of the students are facing. And that's really having that lack of diversity in this campus, and that's what our outreach programs are really here for, is to bring attention, not just only bring attention to the lack of diversity on this campus, but also that feeling of, not feeling like they're welcome into higher education, because our programs are really important where we really bring students and invite them to this campus, not necessarily to really talk about higher education, the importance of being in higher education, and importance for all our communities to, be on this campus, to be on any campus. And, this university still lacks that diversity, and the problem is that we still need, well, not the problem, but we still need these SIO programs to continue. And right now we are temporarily funded by a university, but every 2 years we have to advocate for these programs. Even though we have a 60% average yield rate, and compared to the 18% of the university's average yield rate, and so that really shows that these programs are not only needed, but they are very successful. Because students know students best, and we are really here to bring attention to that issue. So I'm going to pass around a resolution letter that we have, and we can all read it out. Yeah.
What's the yield rate? Can you explain?
Yield rate is so we bring up students who got admitted to campus, and the yield rate is based on students who accepted going on campus. So 60% of average SIR to this campus. Maybe you can help me out.
I have a quick question real quick. What was the 18% that you said? Like that's the university?
Yes, that's the university, and that includes all of their outreach, initiatives. So
Oh, so that's you guys versus them? Okay.
And I'll wait until everyone has a resolution, and maybe we could go around and take turns reading this. Yeah, and I didn't know the turnout, so maybe we could share to next week.
Did everyone get one, or is everyone able to use one? Use one more.
Alright, so I'll just go ahead and start off with the first point, and then we can go along and down the line so we can read it. Please so loud. So here we go. Whereas UC is a public institution that should be welcome to all people and should therefore reflect the diversity of California, and we can go this way.
Whereas communities of color have been underrepresented at UCSC from the day it was founded to today, and
Whereas this ongoing lack of representation is unacceptable and affects the quality of education of all students and
Whereas in the 1990s, UCSC undergraduate students took initiative to organize outreach programs to open the doors to higher education communities of color, and
Whereas in 2003, the UCSC student body showed leadership and commitment to justice by voting to permanently fund these student-initiated outreach programs in pockets, and whereas the university never made the same commitment to permanently support these groups or these programs, although chancellors provided temporary matching funding, and whereas the SIO programs in Dean Education proved to be incredibly successful, recruiting an average of about 60% of high school student participant, compared to the average of about 18% for programs run by professional staff, and
Whereas the university should recognize the leadership, knowledge, and hard work of students who volunteer year after year to increase UCSC diversity.
whereas Chancellor George Blumenthal has supported East Square for many years by granting temporary matching funds, and
Whereas 2019 is the last year of temporary matching funds from the Chancellor and is also the year that Chancellor Blumenthal will retire, and
Whereas the proven and successful SIO programs of East Square should not face an uncertain future, particularly at a time where communities of color are facing rising tides of racism, and
therefore, it resolved that SUA supports and joins in solidarity with East Square in
honoring past and current student leadership and opening the doors of higher education for all students, and
Demanding that the university acknowledge the contribution that student-initiated outreach programs have made to campus diversity, and
Demanding that Chancellor do not retire before agreeing to make the university's temporary matching funds for East Square SIO programs permanent.
yeah, so that's the resolution. So on the back is all of the orgs, colleges that have supported us in the process. You can go ahead and read that. This is the list. We vote for contentious and faculty groups, these are departments, making sure that they are in on this too, so it's not just like students, because obviously we are in the university, we know that has to
And that's also, I guess, part of the list that you see in the back, the student orgs that have endorsed. With that, so that we can unify all the student orgs on campus and particularly really uplift student leadership because sort of like how Martha mentioned earlier, we do have shared values in terms of having these spaces run by students. Students know what students need and students know the students best. And essentially, how it says in the bottom of the letter, like we're tonight hoping that we have y'all's endorsement, because with that endorsement we will have permanent funding, and permanent funding means that we will continue to have these SIO programs, student-initiated outreach programs, continually serve the communities, and they have great impact. For example, without these programs, I personally wouldn't be here, and many students on this campus personally wouldn't be here. I'm just going to share a story. In 2016, when President-elect was inaugurated and everything, or they won the election, it was a big scare to many communities just because of the rhetoric that they were spewing. And for me personally, coming to a school that was 300 miles away from home, it was heavy. It was a lot. It was a scare. It was a worry for my parents. Anything could happen at any moment. And coming up on these programs, I saw communities coming together, and I saw that I would have support coming up. I would have a home, even though I was 300 miles away. And that's what those programs mean. And that is something that has impacted and influenced many students who today are some of those programs. And we want to continue to keep them.
And personally too, like, to me these programs mean so much to me, this program means so much to me. I believe that we really deserve that permanent funding. Because for me, like DJ, I wouldn't be here too on this campus. I came up on ASF, and I wasn't really sure about higher education. I wasn't really sure about, wanting to be part of the community. But coming up that program was really actually life-changing to me. It made me want to SIR on the TUCC just because I really found this home. I could really call East Square and being part of finding out my home.
So this is the campaign for student leadership. So at the top, this is their slogan, students should lead the way, not just pay and obey. It's important when we are talking to you as fellow students because, like, for us to ask for permanent funding is a huge thing, but if we already have the support by students here on campus, then that means that all of us, and like George can see that too, that all of the students are in here, they know exactly what is being said, what is being needed for these communities, for our programs, and making sure that the students are here building solidarity with one another, and making sure that we're here and we got each other's back. Because that in and of itself is very powerful. And that's something that I feel like we need, and I'm pretty sure most folks in this space feel like we need, because like right now, the university isn't listening to us, whether that be the chancellor's search, the new chancellor search, whether it be the Housing West situation that's going on, whether it be the strategic academic planning. We are constantly seeing that students their voices aren't being heard, and whatever is being said within these implementations that are eventually going to affect us at the end of the day, right? So it is very important for this campaign, being a campaign for student leadership, and seeing that students are supporting students in this whole fight of this pandemic. It's just one step, but just knowing that we are in contact with one another, and we say like, hey, I recognize student leadership, I recognize the work that you're doing in this space, and I recognize the work that you're doing in like SUA, this is where whether it be Mecha, whether it be Buying, whether it be Online Buying, and folks in this space are from various different organizations. But just knowing that like, hey, we're here, we got each other, and we got each other's back. Like that in and of itself. So yeah. So we're here asking y'all for y'all's endorsement. So I know that was a lot to read on the resolution, but does anyone have any questions for clarity or just like
I just want to preface this by saying that I see no reason why we shouldn't support this, but I was wondering, does your programming specifically interact with students with disabilities in any that you're aware of?
We open our programs to like anyone who fall in like their respective communities. Like for ASF, they outreach to the Filipinos, historically underrepresented resource communities, so low-income Christian students.
And as far as any accommodations that are needed, we try our best to accommodate and ensure that they are going to have what they need and that way they can have the best experience.
And then the other thing was I noticed that you only have secured 5 Senate's endorsements so far. Have you not gone to the other 5 yet? Are you planning on seeking the other 5 endorsements?
We're still waiting on replies from the other senators, but we have gone to those states too. Thank you.
I was hoping that you could elaborate on some of the programs you run more, just the specifics of them.
So I did mention names of the programs. So there's Orale, there is Destination Higher Education, and there is Step Forward. So these programs are, I guess, individual programs themselves, but they also come together to ensure that there is collaboration and mingling between different communities. So Orale serves the Chicana Southern community, Destination Higher Education serves the African Black urban community, and ASF serves the Latinx community. And so part of what Bernard mentioned earlier, these programs influence and encourage us to pursue higher education, to ensure that we have resources, to make sure that we're making a decision that will make sense to us in our situation. That doesn't necessarily mean knowledge of literacy, but it means higher education on a certain path, and that's what the program.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns?
In terms of just general timelines, when would you definitely need this resolution passed and approved by the SUA? Do you already have a meeting scheduled with George, or is there any barriers?
Yes, we have like a week when we would be meeting. We would like to have an answer from y'all by next week Wednesday.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing this to us, first of all, and thank you for doing all the work that it took to go to all of these different organizations. I know that's a lot. Thank you. And then also, you said that there's a matching, so like the students pay a certain amount with student fees, and then you're looking for the chancellor to pay or the school to pay. Could you explain a little bit about like how that, like, does the fee continue to increase? And then, because obviously these services hopefully will like increase in size and increase in like ability to serve more students, and so that would require more money. And so like hopefully that money would be able to increase over time, because you wouldn't just want to get stuck at like a budgetary limit and then have to do this whole process over again. So I'm just wondering if there's like something built into this system that lets it increase over time so that you have that money that you need.
So yeah, we students who help fund E-Squared through Measure 10, and that's $4.20. And for the chancellor's match, he has been giving us temporary funding where we have to, renegotiate it every 2 years, and he matches $1.25 per student, and that's to fund directly to the SIA programs. And sorry, what was the second part?
Like, does it increase over time, or is there a way that we can make sure that when hopefully that he supports or whatever, that he says that he'll continue doing this or make this a permanent thing, but that it will actually continue to increase over time instead of just being that 150 or whatever forever?
So as of right now, we're just going to keep it the same at $1.25, and of course we thought about that too, and we just hope that we can continue to have a conversation and continue fighting for these programs, and hopefully in the future that may be happening. But right now we're focusing on the permanent funding part.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you all very much for coming, and for all of your hard work.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and we'll be able to hear back from y'all on Wednesday.
Yes. So, Wednesday the 10th.
Yes.
We'll have a response.
Awesome.
Thank you all so much for coming to this space and all the support that supported us. Thank you.
Bye. Okay.
Take care, man.
Hi everybody. We're going back to announcements and public comments now. I'll be taking staff for announcements and public comments. Oh, I have. I see. Yes, Ishan.
Alright, perfect. Hi, my name is Ishan Kimani. I'm Chief of Staff for President Ivan and I'm here to I'm here to talk about a council that I'm working on right now, and I will be having a further, more in-depth presentation later on in this quarter as the council starts doing more work. The council I'm referring to is the Environmental Protection and Public Health Council. Now, the job of this council would be to make sure that the Student Union Assembly follows some guidelines and make sure that that we are taking into account the health of the environment as well as the health of the students whenever we make decisions. And the second part would be to unify all the UCSC environmental organizations, clubs, as well as the public health organization clubs. This includes environmental justice and some of the medical and public health organizations that exist on campus right now. And so basically, I just wanted to say that this presentation will be coming up soon and give you guys a heads up, as well as if anyone wants to help me create this council, I'm right now working with some students and some SUA representatives, as well as some clubs that are on campus right now. So if you would like to join, go ahead and contact me. Yeah.
Can you talk to me after, because I'm trying to work with these people called Fossil Free UC.
Sure, yeah. Working with them too, yeah. I'll definitely. Cool. Any other questions?
Anything?
Strike next week, Wednesday, the 10th. Yeah, that's it. Be there, please. You know what it's about. It's been about the same shit as the school is like it is, right?
Hey y'all, so I just want to bring back to y'all a little bit of what we talked about at the end of last quarter, which was the funds that we secured. So again, just to reiterate, we were able to secure $500,000 from UCOP, and we're going to be, half of that $500,000 is $250,000 is to hire a full-time lawyer. So we'll be able to start providing free legal services for students starting next year, fall quarter. We'll be going through a whole lawyer hiring to this stage. We'll do all that. I'll update y'all throughout the quarter. The other half, which is $200,000, is for basic needs scholarships and emergency housing fund. So that means giving funds to students directly to be able to help them in transitioning in case they're about to be evicted, or if they're couch surfing right now, help them find a temporary place to be able to live. We want to be able to maximize the impact points that this has, because I want to make sure that SUA in the next 2 years after these funds run out can get permanent funds and can show that they've had a really great impact on helping students transition and adjust to this terrible Santa Cruz housing market. So if you are interested in helping to assess the $200,000 for the basic needs scholarships, whether it's creating, if you have a certain idea for something. It's also for a basic needs hub. I left that pretty vague in the actual proposal, but I'm hoping to combine the SUA food pantry in a way, somehow, some way, someday. So if you're interested in strategizing on the basic needs scholarships, or if you're interested in learning how to get involved or how to expand these legal services program, please come talk to me after. You can reach out on my email. Conversations about this have already been underway, but we will be getting really strategic, focusing on this next week. So reach out to me as soon as possible so we can get started, okay? Thank you.
I have a quick announcement, and this is something that I'd love to talk to you all after, if it sounds interesting to you. I'm just going to be reading off an email I got about a request for this to be announced. So the email is from a worker, and it says, I'm a student worker at the Sustainability Office, and would like to get in the, promoting to promote the Cool Campus Challenge, which is a UC-wide sustainability initiative. It is an online platform where students, staff, and faculty can earn points and prizes for taking sustainable actions. Competition between the UC schools. So if that sounds like, basically, we also call Cool Campus Challenge competition where you get points for sustainable actions. If you all, that sounds interesting, if you all would like to hear more about that, I can get your names out and connect you with this person. Cool. Thank you all. Are there any more? Yes, Bella.
I'm sorry I was late at all. We will be opening the pantry tomorrow. Lots of work that had to get done within like a few days. But yeah, the pantry will be opening tomorrow. Same hours every day, 12 to 6. It is a support pantry that is within the space, so there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of work to deal with both combining the pantries as far as the next 3 weeks go, since that's just needs to be cleaned out of the cow diagonal area and the coffee shop before they can move back in. Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
But yeah, so just for now, if you are wondering if the store will be open, that they currently are open, but inside that SUA food pantry, and by week 3 or 4, they should be moving back to their space, and the SUA food pantry will be running solely by ourselves as well.
Fuck asbestos.
Yeah. We're out of time on this agenda item. I have one person on staff. Yes, Stefan.
Motion to extend time by 2 minutes.
Motion to extend time by Tuesday by Stefan.
Hi, thank you again for funding Dragon. That is this month.
I'm really sorry, Tommy. We didn't get a second on it. Alright. See no. I'm sorry.
Thank you for funding Dragon Ball. It's April 27th. If you want to volunteer, you can contact me. I'll be getting that together. Let me know. It's THARAMIR. Yeah, I'm going to find it on that thing. But yes, contact me or tell your people if you want to volunteer. Yeah, that's all it. It's the 27th, sorry.
Sorry about that, Tom. That's on me. Okay. Cool. So now we're voting on old business. So we're starting with the SUA constitutional amendments. Changes. This was proposed on the I'm sorry. This is proposed on the 5th. So it's going to be in the folder from the 5th. Sponsorship deadline is tomorrow. We were going to try and be a little bit of it by voting on stuff on the 12th. It was week 10, so we didn't have quorum. So now we're voting on it now, which means that we really have to vote on it tonight. Just to preface this conversation is that the ultimate goal of any sort of debate we have is for a vote. Yes.
Hi everybody. So this is the product of a whole lot of work and communication, and I just wanted to say thank you to the SUA Vision Committee, to all of the SUA members, to the 3, possibly 4 student governments that have sponsored it now. Still waiting to hear back from Cal. But I wanted to say thank you for everybody who has helped me with this, because this was a lot of work. So I'm very happy with where it is now. It's a total of 162 changes to the SUA Constitution. Everybody has had access to it for about a month, including the past 2 or 3 weeks for the complete, finalized, and updated version that went out to the student governments. If anybody is curious about it, feel free to reach out to me. Because I am the primary writer for this amendment, I will be recusing myself because I have a conflict of interest. And because I don't want anybody to feel uncomfortable, I'm also going to step out of the room for the actual vote. So if anybody could grab me after the vote, I would appreciate it.
Can you stay if we have any questions?
Yes, yes, until the vote actually happens.
Yeah.
Yes. First, I want to say thank you to Stefan and to Vision Committee for really working on this and putting this all together. It is a phenomenal whole assessment. There is one part that I have a really big concern with, and I wasn't able to bring this up to you in the beginning because I didn't look over it before. So there is a part, if you check Article 3, Section G, Part 1. So basically, when we talk about recalling people, whether it's officers or elected representatives or anybody in SUA, recall is supposed to be a lengthy process so that so that not anyone can just be mad at somebody because they didn't fund their organization for something. And so when I wanted to gain a little bit of knowledge about other campus governments and see how they operate and how recall works on their campuses, so we can see how their efficiency is working. And so when I talked to other student body presidents, like one from UC Berkeley and UC San Diego, they did have concerns with me on the fact that the recommendation would reduce the amount of students who can basically petition to recall a person from 1,000 or from 10% of the student body to 100, which is obviously not reflective in either, number one, the actual votes that people get to actually do these positions, or number two, it's just not reflective of I think the process in here, as it is right now, is a little bit too easy for anyone to get recalled. That's my issue. I think that in terms of the recall process as a whole as well, I had a concern with taking out the college government chairs as a system who also has to go through these checks and balances. Number one, the reason why I have a concern with that is, number one, we have to ensure that that we have accountability as the SUA in terms of implicit bias. So if we all vote to recall somebody, I just don't believe that the same body should vote to impeach that person. I think that when we talk about governments that have been operating for over 200 years now, like for example the United States Congress, the House impeaches and the Senate actually what's the word? Tries and subpoena, I don't know what the word is. But that's the same way, and I talked to the president from 2011, the SUA president, and talked to her about this as well. That was the same way that the originators were trying to break this up, where we have the SUA, they can impeach, they can recall, they can do whatever, but ultimately, we have another system of body that is not necessarily, the SUA that actually makes those kind of decisions, so that we're ensuring accountability, so that we're dispersing more student power to other important constituencies like our student governments. We're ensuring inclusion by defining these stakeholders as these people who really have a role in the SUA. And I really feel hesitant to take that away, and I would advise, as a recommendation, to leave the recall process to at least 10% of the student body, if not, I don't know, 1,000, more than 100. That's like 2 classes. that's way too small. But other than that, I think every other thing on here is pretty good. And yeah, that's just my concern. So, yeah.
I'm sorry, could you cite the specific section for the 1,000 to 100 shift? Because I'm not seeing that in the main change that I made.
Which one?
For the recall of an executive officer?
I
Or-
believe so, yeah. I believe the original language in the Constitution right now is 10%, if I'm...
It's 3/4 vote of the SUA, there is no student petition.
There is.
Where is that?
Section D. Thank you.
D. The same article? Section D, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, section D of article 3 is, G.
She is in gold.
Thank you. Oh, okay, so to address those concerns, the recall process would be initiated, not fully just somebody is recalled by that 100 votes. 100 votes doesn't kick somebody off, it just kicks off the process.
Yeah.
So the logic behind that was to have both a mechanism within the SUA and a mechanism outside of the SUA that enables this process to take effect when realistically there are going to be restrictions on the quantity of students that are going to be like super involved, super knowledgeable, and also really dedicated towards figuring out what's going on with the actions or the conduct of an SUA officer or a group of officers. Now, this is restricted in scope towards maximize. This was kind of a trade-off because on one hand, yes, it does reduce the barrier to entry for the recall process to begin, but it also expands the scope of what the recall process is doing. Because by shifting that from solely the discretion of the chairs, it moves that to the discretion of the spaces. So that way each space has a vote instead of each chair has a vote as a part of this group that doesn't meet on a regular basis outside of recall place. So by giving maximize the student involvement in the recall process in the first place, which is pretty paramount towards making sure that if somebody is recalled, it's not because there's bad blood, it's not because they're like super unpopular, it's because their constituent bodies, the bodies that make up this space, are able to interact with them and make a determination that is relevant to the recall process in general. So I think I understand the concern, but I think that as is, I'm looking at the crossout section because the recall convention as it stands right now is in the little crossout section under section F. And so currently a recall convention for any executive officer may be called by a 3/4 vote of the SUA. There is no way for students to initiate a recall vote outside of that. There is no 1,000. I didn't move it from 1,000 to 100. I added 100.
That's interesting because when I look at the Constitution, I don't know if this is just the 2015 version on the assembly. Do you see a section, Henry?
No.
I can look it up and just check if there's a discrepancy though. Thank you for bringing that to me.
Okay, Cameron, I got you.
I think it should be left alone, it's more democratic.
Cameron, I got you on set.
Okay.
Yeah, I do want to remind you all before we move on that we are voting on sponsorship, which I should have defined from the outset. That is, we're not saying whether we support this or not. We're saying whether it should be on the ballot in spring. So every spring there's a campus-wide election where we vote on like fees and referendums, we vote on candidates, and we vote sometimes on constitutional changes. Stuff gets on that ballot by like SUA sponsoring it, which means that we approve it on behalf of the students to be on the ballot. So we're not making a choice for the students, we're just allowing the students to have the choice or not allowing the choice. Make sense? Cool. All right, next I have David.
Yeah, I have a few quick yes or no questions. I'd like to be able to ask them all in like a chunk, but if you want me to just ask them one at a time.
Sure,
I'm happy
as
to
long
do
as
that.
they're quick.
Yeah. All right, so the first question is, how long have you been working on this, Stefan?
The big 5 chaos.
And did you receive any of the concerns that were raised today before today's meeting?
No.
How long have you been soliciting feedback on your amendment?
This month.
And anyone can answer this. Has the Council of Chairs met this year at all?
Yes.
How many times? All right. Would you say that it hasn't been a lot?
I would say
Rare.
Yeah, Mayor?
So do you think it would be fair to say that it's hard for that body to act as an institutional check on officers?
It's not even an official institution, so.
All right, thank you. And then Stefan, is this a similar as to what you instituted at the community college level when you did your amendment there?
Yes, but this is more tailored towards the unique challenges for UC Santa Cruz, because it's different.
Would you say that the recall method that you add here allows students to give more voice that they did not previously have?
From my perspective, and of course that comes with my biases, yes.
And just to conclude, just to clarify, you did not receive the concerns that were raised today before today's meeting, despite the fact that you've been seeking input for over a month.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cameron?
Yeah, the fact that we're having a debate about this at all just shows that it can be voted on. And like David and Stefan just said, like, it's been worked on for months now, and there's been a month to give feedback, so it should really come on the ballot and students can decide. And it's hard to get voter turnout as it is, so whole different thing. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention too that something that's really important about this amendment, in my opinion, is that it actually adds a whole new level of actually having student engagement in the recall process through the.
That's a little bit different. I apologize. May I respond?
Can you just tell me the name of it though?
Judicial Council.
Thank you, the Judicial Council. Can I just finish what I'm saying? So like, it just helps to have this extra body. It's called the Judicial Council, and it's made up of students outside of SUA that actually get to have a direct impact on what happens, like what we did or what they propose as a decision for what should happen to, or like they're like they're a judiciary, so they're like the judges that decide what, they're not the final say, but they get to look at the evidence if something goes wrong and decide what happens, and then, that has checks and balances as well, but that actually adds like a whole nother level of like importance to like having this like more engagement from students when things go wrong in SUA, which is really what Stefan is focusing on in this amendment, is like having students outside of the space be really integral to the space and have a say in what goes on here. Because like we saw in fall, it's really important that students outside of the space not only know what's going on, but have a say in what's going on and have a say in what happens if things go wrong. And that's like, those are the big things. So I think that this is really crucial, and I think that students outside of this space are going to be really interested to read about this and have it on their ballot. And I don't think that we deserve to like wait for them.
Yes, thank you. So I want to echo what everyone said today about the importance of elevating student voice. I also do want to point out a small mistake that I made in conflating the elected officers with the elected representatives. The elected representatives is where it shows that 20% of the students are needed to do that. And also, but back to my earlier point, I'm not recommending that we take away the votes from students to be able to influence the process whatsoever. Just recommending that we somehow increase that number or something based off the feedback that I got from other student body presidents at other UCs and where their recall processes work really well. And so that's feedback that I wanted to share to the group. And of course, I don't think that we'll be taking away any votes from students if that was to happen. But I just wanted to share that so that everyone knew what was going on at other campuses and wanted to see if we wanted to do something like that or not.
David? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you care to have a quick response?
Oh, sure. I just wanted to say for the sake of the technical process that's required for amendments, that it would be too late to make any changes now because it has been introduced and now it's being voted on. However, that's also something that we could consider for amendments for the next academic year. Respectfully, I don't think that it's so crucial that it's like a poison pill, so to speak, for the amendment overall, but I do understand the concern. My goal in making it 100 instead of 1,000 would be to lower the barrier for students to express their concerns that would lead to at least initiating that process within the spacing within the system that had been developed. So that was just my intent behind it.
Thank you, thank you.
Motion to sponsor.
Motion to sponsor. I have a motion to sponsor by David, second by Cameron. Are there any objections? Oh, yes, yeah. I'm gonna pause this.
If there's more debate, come and get me.
Alright. Any objections? Alright, seeing none, the motion passes. Please sponsor this amendment. Thank you, David. Before we continue, I did not, because they came in different weeks, and like on how I built this week's agenda, I didn't include the Career Center in this. So can I get just a real quick motion? I appreciate the help on like a 10 minutes after college government week to discuss Career Center. Cameron?
Motion to add the Career Center to the agenda.
Thank you. What was that?
Motion to add the Career Center referendum after the college government fee.
Thank you very much. When I connect again, I will add that. That's fun. Okay. Next, going into the TAPS. This is going to be from that same March 5th meeting. We're going to go into discussing TAPS sponsorship. Same concept. Should this be on the ballot or not? David.
So I want to preface this by saying that I have a lot of issues with this measure. I don't like the lack of clarity on some of the items. That being said, the disabled community is severely impacted by the lack of transport on this campus. I myself have knee issues. They're not to the point where I would feel justified or appropriate in asking for disability van service, but it is to the point where if our meetings end after the buses have stopped running, I have to anticipate waking up with pain the next morning. When it's raining, I have to anticipate having to walk to all my classes, and it impacts my ability to access my education in a pain-free way. So at the end of the day, although I think I had a lot of issues when this was presented within my college government, I think this is something that is essential and that monumentally acts to improve the mobility of students with disabilities on this campus.
Yes.
I reserve my right to make a motion. This is the second year they're running this referendum. I personally don't like it, but the fact that you can have a debate on it means that we should put it up to the students to vote. And I motion to sponsor the referendum.
I have a motion to sponsor referendum, second by TAPS referendum, second by Layton. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the motion passes. We've sponsored the TAPS referendum. Next, we have the Student Services Hub. This was the thing, just as a reminder, the new renovation of Kresge having the space for the student services over there. Is there any discussion on the Student Services Hub referendum? Yes, Emma?
What? Sorry, what is it?
The student
I hear
services.
you, I heard what you said, but I'm just confused.
You want more information? Let's go back to the, yeah, let's do that.
That would be
Offline.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
It's not that important. Does somebody
Yes.
Can Bella just give me a little lowdown?
Yeah, let's do
Just
that.
give us a lowdown.
I don't think it'd be so good to look at, just to fact check me, but I think it's supposed to be a space for the sub support as well as, a couple of the other services.
Like camps and health into one building, basically.
Yeah, they shared the building, I don't know, we discussed this, and we asked so many questions, but it's supposed to be for the building, or did we say it was for the services that would actually?
It is for the building.
Okay, so that's where we're at. Thanks for everything.
Yeah, I don't seem to have.
Can I elaborate on that?
Yeah, that'd be good. Thank
They
you.
want to start implementing a fee that starts at $23.90 starting in 2024. To support that, and then I think it,
What are you looking at right now?
oh, my own notes.
Oh, okay.
It would be the Cove Flood Support and CAPS, and they are given a chance to get a place in the new rescue building, and we would be paying for like the facility fee, that being like, I think, like I don't know what that would be.
They are paying for their space in the building.
Okay, and that's what we would be contributing.
Also, it's also in the minutes if you want to take a quick look. I don't think I got a copy of the presentation. Let's see if we can find out.
Some of it will be going towards return aid fund, which goes back to students, and the rest goes towards operating expenses.
Emma, any more questions on it? Cameron?
I'm not gonna make a motion, but I'm gonna talk on it real quick. It's kind of weird that, like, we're voting on a thing that's gonna affect students 5 years later, but this is very important, and I think it should be voted on anyways, so I would hope that everyone else is in agreement that we should put on the ballot, and that's all I have to say.
Okay. Anna?
Well, what I have to say about it is that when they came to Crescent Parliament, one of the things that stood out to me is that they are having to pay for their space in the building, which I personally think is ridiculous, because these services need a space to be. The building will get renovated and somebody will get to use that space, but these services that serve students are being charged to use it. They do have another year to get it on the ballot before they lose their offer of a loan to get that space. And I think in that time we can maybe work on getting them a better arrangement, because I just think that's ridiculous. They should just get to move in.
I have Joshua next on that. Okay. Thank you, Tish.
I'll withdraw
Ryan?
Okay, so it's not really about this one particularly, but we need to be careful about how many things we sponsor for the ballot. Mainly because if there's too many things that are on there that he starts off with a $24 increase for this one with whatever the increase is for the other like three others for like taps and the college government fees, people can get a little bit of sticker shock. So it's honestly better if they're even for the ones that are not time sensitive, like this one. I believe it would be better to leave it for the next year or the year without as much on the ballot, because if there's too many things asking for fees, pretty much fees, people will be turned off to that, and then they will be less likely to support it even if they support the cause.
Shubhika?
Another issue we had, especially in College Science Center, was basically you're funding it for the building, but perhaps in instances like this, the problem is that there are so many students with
sucks their school doesn't support our programs and like having that space dedicated for them. And it seems like other schools do that, just like have that space dedicated for expanding these programs. And like I myself would even vote to like push this because I feel like it's stupid that we have to pay out of our own pocket to like fund the construction for these buildings, even though like I work at shop and shit. But like it's just like I want this on the ballot because I want this conversation to start across campus about how our like school itself and like the UCL office of the president like doesn't support them funding these buildings for us and those spaces being dedicated for that. Instead they're looking for like someone to take forward like that loan or whatever. So like regardless of course this is gonna be a space for someone else if we don't support this or if like Caps and Care doesn't get it. But like I just want to see on the ballot because I want this conversation to start.
Thank you, Tish.
I have a few points. One of them was that one of the main reasons why this bill was like, from what I got from SFAC and like their presentation at Crown, was one of the reasons why they needed this space. What like so desperately was because the Cove buildings were like really bad and were gonna close down. So if they don't find a new building, Cove is gonna disappear. And like the reason why you need to vote in advance is because you just find like that space in advance because you can't move like that big of a service the year it like closes down. So like that's the reason why it's being voted 5 years in advance. And I'm not sure exactly, but I believe this is their last chance to get it on the ballot and to get this approved because I think they only have 2 tries and one of them was last year. So I don't know if they have a try next year again. I'm not sure.
They do.
Okay.
So I feel that we do have the chance next year to get on the ballot again. Yeah, they all, there's also something in here about like if it doesn't happen, this, I think, if it doesn't happen, okay, thank you.
Point of person, could you make the font just a bit bigger?
I make the font a bit bigger, that's a big point. What part, are people wanting to see, I'm just going to see the beginning of this. Alright, while I'm doing that, Bella.
Yeah, I have to agree that we should make that we're in favor for this. Just coming from a standpoint, working in a pantry and working with students who really do use that services a lot, that it is very important that we have a space solidified. If Oakridge can extend that offer to the state pantry for another 3 years, we would have a space to be at. And honestly, most admin don't really care about helping you when it comes to finding your space. You're going to be thrown off the streets. So I think that getting these services that aren't very prioritized by other admin to be prioritized by us, it at least shows that that we really care about these services being here, and that we need to make sure that even if they don't get on the ballot this year, that next year we also are supporting them. I don't know, I think that we should show our solidarity, especially because let's say they do get on the ballot this year, but then the vote doesn't go through or something again happens where we don't have enough people to vote to pass the referendum, then we have to for sure be on the ballot for next year, and I don't want to take that risk. So I think we should really push for this to happen.
Alright, I have 5 people on staff. We are out of time on this agenda item and we need to have a vote. Lauren.
Motion at 5.
Thank you, Beth. I did this last meeting too. I don't know why. Thank you, Lauren. So, motion to extend by 5 minutes made by Lauren, seconded by Cameron. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we have 5 more minutes on this agenda item. Next on staff, I have Lauren.
I reserve my right to make a motion. While I acknowledge the points made by our previous speaker concerning the idea of having to get items on the ballot, I think this has the potential to really help students, and I think the only reason we should not sponsor something to put on a ballot is if it wouldn't help students or if it would somehow be dangerous to put it on the ballot. I see no other reason why not to. With that, I motion to sponsor this.
Alright, I have a motion to sponsor by Lauren, seconded by Cameron. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we have sponsored the student services referendum. Next on the agenda, we have Oh dear. College government fee? Oh, and the internet is working again. Right. No. Okay. College government fee. Is there anyone that wants to get on staff for a college government fee? Kim?
Reserve my right to make a motion. College governments are broke. They can't pay their outreach leaders, or whatever your respective college calls it. Our school does not put on as many events as other schools do because our student government doesn't have as much money. And this fee hasn't been increased since like the beginning of the school's time. And with that, I motion to sponsor this referendum.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to sponsor this referendum by Cameron, second by Anna. Are there any objections? Yeah, David?
So I've been going back and forth on this a lot within my college government. I've voted to sponsor this, but I've been doing a lot of thinking about it, and I'd like to just float a few ideas. The first is this concept of state capacity, which comes from political science, which is the idea that states, you can measure the degree in which a state or a government is able to provide and perform basic services. And I think it's a little bit difficult to use that kind of concept with student government, but I think that it's still informative. I think that it would be fair to say that all of our student government has pretty poor state capacity. We have trouble delivering on basic services that we're chartered to do so. And I think it would be fair to say that for all the flaws of SUA, I think that these flaws are also present in the college governments, and to some degree I would argue that they are more present. Here in SUA we have paid staff that, are officers and they're interns. They enable us to deliver on these services even though we struggle a lot, and I really am worried about what's going to happen if we give more money to the college governments when they don't have that capacity. I'm also worried, and again I have limited insight into this since I've only seen my own college government, but I'm worried about the lack of a standard model that we use for funding things, and if we don't have a standard model that we use for how we decide whether to fund things, then there's inherently going to be inequalities in how we fund things. I really like how SOFA works. I think that when you have one meeting where everything is looked at, you really have, everyone's in the same mindset, everything is considered in the same way, and I really am cautious about having, why should we have 10 different places that with each have small pots of money? And then you just get dependent, and then whether you're funded or not is dependent on the mood of a certain college government instead of this body which spends its time thinking about how do we fund things. I am very supportive of paying outreach leaders. However, I don't necessarily think that we should be funding the college governments in more money. And during the discussions about this, I've never heard exactly how much is going to be put aside for the college governments. I've only heard that this will fund outreach leaders and increase college government pools. So that's where a big concern for me comes. And finally, I'll say that we're looking at what our previous speaker alluded to, which is the idea of sticker shock, that as we put more and more items on the ballot, the other ones become less and less likely to pass as the total sum that we're looking at increases. I think that we've already voted to sponsor and put on the ballot some very important things, and we have to think about whether when we endorse this item, we will reduce the likelihood that these other items, for instance, allowing students to get around campus, for instance, ensuring that mental health services have a location secured in the years to come, that those items become less likely to pass. So in conclusion, I think that because there's this unstandardized way of funding things throughout the college governments, and because there's this lower state capacity, and finally, because of this inequality which comes from a lack of a standardized funding model, and the lack of clarity on how much is going to go towards funding OLs and how much is going to go towards funding funding requests, I think that we should not endorse this at this time, or sponsor it.
I should have asked this when we brought up this agenda item. Does anyone have any questions about what this fee actually is? For people more so. This is also from the March 5th meeting. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Is there any specific language on how the money gets allocated?
Let's go to that.
It's for the college governments to take.
Yeah.
I think it's college government and the program coordinator.
Yeah.
So here's fee would increase with those support student events, student salaries, stipends, for administrative staff, and funding allocations to student loans. But I don't think there was any numbers on like how much money specifically of this. So the breakdown. This is their increases. I got you on step. Oh, do you have a question about the fee itself? Okay. All right. Resuming step.
Okay. Wait, am I the next one, sir? Or
No.
is it anything that you guys
Okay, so Brian, this is my culture because I was calling on questions about the fee itself, so that we could all have like a more productive conversation with everyone on the same page. Cool. Okay. Dave Long, I have you on step. Joshua, you next on step.
I'm good.
Yes.
On previous speaker, like, it's, yeah, like, I understand the thing, like, we have all.
I'm sorry to trouble you. Can you speak up a little bit?
I know there's a problem with, like, different parts of campus is very, like, decentralized in a way, but at the same time, when we talk about state capacity, like, the state of a country have all these bureaucracy and departments that take care of everything within the region. Like, I understand, you know, that from the class, like, both from class order, all of those countries have department, bureaucracy, and everything. So we cannot take the efficiency in the term of student government and compare them to state capacity and efficiency like that. So I would like to reject that and just, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
One. Cameron, I put you at wrong because you already spoke.
What?
I put you below because you already spoke.
Okay.
Okay, to address some of the concerns of a previous speaker, one with standard, I understand the issues that people would have with that. However, we're letting that affect our decision based on the placement of the referendum on our agenda. And that's something that concerns me because some of the things that come, that this one in my opinion is very important just as the ones before it were important, just as the one after it is important. And so because this is lower on the agenda, I think that should not in any way affect how we're thinking about whether or not we sponsor it. In terms of how the funding would work, like I understand that like with SUA, with funding, we have like systems in place through our constitution that make sure that funding goes through in the correct way and fair ways, and that's the same how it would be if this college government fee would pass. It's that the students have the power to control where the funding would go to. However, once they choose where that funding goes to, they don't have to deal with it anymore. Then we'd go to the college programs coordinator. So that's professional staff hired for specific things such as this. And so with that, I know I didn't reserve my right. So I would encourage sponsoring this.
Ryan.
Okay. So yeah, a big part of this is student outreach leaders. Pretty much college orientation leaders don't get paid, like, at all. It's essentially a volunteer position where you're working around 60 hours a week for 2 weeks. It's a temporary position, but this is part of this bill or referendum is just to make sure they actually get paid instead of just working. And this will also just lead to a lot more outreach and stuff. Because you're looking for workers too.
Late.
Thank you. So I wanted to address the sticker shock concern that some previous speakers have also talked on, and just state that, restate that this shouldn't affect what we decide is valuable, considering that all of these do hold significant value in my opinion. Furthermore, by providing these as options, we give students the chance to vote on what they value, and I think that is inherently important in the first place. Furthermore, I think this referendum is significantly important because, as a previous speaker mentioned, college fees haven't been raised in a significant amount of time. And due to inflation, that means that each year, the real amount of funds that a college government has to do the exact same policies decreases. So each year, college governments are less and less able to effectively provide for students. And I think this referendum will provide college governments to more adequately address the needs and concerns of students. So I think we should vote in favor of this so that students have the option.
Alexandrina,
Yeah.
motion.
I reserve my right to
Make a motion.
make a motion. Okay, so this referendum, its main goal is to increase the minimum wage for workers who work during orientation week. And right now they're not paid, yet they help hundreds of students move on to the UCSC campus. And to meet the demands and congruence with the increased student population, I think this referendum would really help. And so it'll cause a fee increase for each student. This fee increase would basically be set aside for, a majority of it would be set aside for how many orientation leaders each college decides to pay. And the rest of the money will be given to the discretion of the college senates. And the idea that college senates are not as efficient as a larger body, I would like to argue against that because each student government knows exactly what its population base is and how to more accurately help the students in their college. And by giving college governments more money, I don't think that's a detracting element, but actually adding more individuality to the UCSC campus and allowing our students to achieve what they can achieve. Motion to sponsor.
Second.
Apologies.
I have a motion to sponsor the college fee referendum by motion, second by Living. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the sponsorship passes. Did I miss someone? Sorry about that. Okay. Now we'll do the Career Center referendum vote. Same thing. We're voting on sponsorship. This is more recent. This is going to be in the drive for March 12th. Leighton.
Thank you. The first thing I would like to direct every single person's attention to is their campus opinion poll from 2017. This poll allowed students on this campus to vote for what they wanted the Career Services Department to do. And in their poll, none of their individual topics received more than 50% approval from our students. Now this is important because if their own poll, which they drew their conclusions from about what they should do, didn't get over 50%, we already have students' voices. We've already heard from students that they did not want any single thing in the majority that they were potentially providing. The importance of this to me is that they took this poll and they decided to push for those things anyways. And I think it's a disgrace that we could even vote in favor of endorsing something that students already denied.
Cameron?
I reserve my right to make a motion. Okay, so first off, previous speaker addressing that, the poll was based on like the number of things that people said they wanted, and then like out of that list, it's like, okay, which one do you like the most? It's not, oh, we don't want any of these things. And then aside from that, like this is the Career Center, and this is like what gets you employment, and this is something that like directly benefits students. And like as it is, when you graduate, it's not that like easy to get a job, and this is like a resource that directly benefits students. Also, the fee is not that much. I don't remember the specific number, but I think it's like 7 or something like that right now. Don't quote me on that. And they did a ton of outreach. Like they went to every space last year and this year. They've gone to different identity spaces. Like they definitely put in the work on this. And with that said, I'd like to motion to sponsor this referendum.
I have a motion to sponsor the Career Center referendum made by Cameron, seconded by Bella. Are there any objections? Leighton, do you care to state your objection?
A previous speaker did not address my concern specifically because yes, those options were selected. However, students in their own internal poll did not vote over 50%. So I don't think as a body we should endorse something that students already voted on and voted in the negative against.
Did yes, welcome to my stack. Sorry, did
I don't have a clear understanding of how the opinion poll works, so I don't want to speak on that. What I do want to say is I feel like this is how every single referendum should be done. There should be outreach. There should be a clear level of critical thinking by the people putting on the ballot saying, does this serve students? How does this serve students? And really think about it. We saw that they dropped their price from something like $30 or $20, halved it, looking at what student needs are. During the presentation, they indicated at various levels how they're going to ensure student input. And I feel like if for no other reason, we should sponsor this because it sends the message that if you want to get on the ballot, this is the process that you should use.
Devon?
Kind of just on this topic, I would like to echo what a previous speaker said, in the sense of these folks put in the work for this for the past 2 years. If we're doing the logic of, well, this thing enough votes on the opinion poll, then should the litmus test be that they put up, an opinion poll the first year and then actual vote next year? I thought we're kind of a litmus test. Like, at least they actually put out something, like an opinion poll. The taps, they failed. Well, there wasn't the highest threshold last year. The Student Services Hub didn't, put out an opinion poll last year. The College of Governments didn't put out opinion polls last year. So when these folks have put out opinion polls, like, should that be the litmus test, right? So at least they tried and put an opinion poll on the ballot for students to vote on. So if anything, that would actually have a lot better understanding of that than any of the other sponsorships we just gave. So for that, we should be voting in the affirmative to put this on the ballot.
Thank you. So?
Although I agree that the Career Center did put in a good amount of work into getting this on the ballot, I just feel that occasionally the Career Center is really out of touch with reality. Like if you go into a LinkedIn, they'll look at LinkedIn for 1 or 2 minutes, but then they'll advertise handshake, and no one uses handshake. How can I just in person? And then in particular to this referendum, they're talking about an AI that gives resumes. That's not an industry standard by any means. And I know that if my family does jobs at looking at resumes and they hire people at big companies like Google, Apple, Facebook, someone physically reads your resume. There's no AI that reads your resume. Maybe like startup companies here and there will do that, but that's not the reality of it. And I don't like that the Career Center is pushing for this new technology that might catch on, that might not catch on. But I don't feel like spending money on something that won't even probably exist or it's not even a standard yet. So although I like what the Career Center does, like they'll look at your resume and they could do a pretty decent job. But a lot of the services they offer are not really beneficial outside of using money.
I have a question for you. When was the poll taken?
Oh, the poll, it's on their presentation actually in 2017. As you can see there, you can see the percentages on the right side in red for each item.
Okay, because they made some important changes and like they reduced something, so was that after the poll or before the poll?
I assume,
If it was, I'm sorry, if it was after, then they did look at the poll results and like kind of, I don't remember what exactly they took away, but they took out some money and like funded it to some other way. So I guess like if it was after the poll, they did put in something in, like after analyzing the poll.
I don't know if this is what you're referring to.
There's a spot where you crosses off. I think someone funded that money for them.
Okay. I think my memory of this was that these 3 things, platforms, programs, and people, were all going to be on the ballot. We're all going to be reasons to fund, and then like they had found other programming for the people, or something happened with the people where they got the feedback that it was like too much, and they took out the people. So it's just going to be platforms and programs. Yeah. Okay. Bella.
Yeah, I would have to, I'm in the favor of stuck with this as well, just because most of the career centers on different campuses, at least for the UC system, have very elaborate career centers that are more impactful to the student body, especially when it
that we increase the amount of funding that the Career Center receives. And looking at the poll that was taken, most students voted for the improved user-friendly technology and internship job fairs and more specialized career fairs. Personally, as a student, I would like to see more in person things that we're improving on instead of technology. I think that it's more experience to get all the resume building and the internships and knowing what interviews are like. So I'm hoping that, is there a possibility, sorry, I don't know where I'm going. I'm just asking the question if it's possible to go back to the Career Center and ask them if they are able to gauge more of their funding towards, no? Not at all?
No, the deadline is tomorrow.
Oh,
To
that's
get back to sponsorship.
great. Okay,
Yeah.
well then, I don't really agree then. At the end of my logic.
Okay.
Yeah, why don't we just put this on the ballot for students to discuss and then move forward. I know that there's a lot of disagreements right now, and like we said with the other agenda items, you know, if there's a whole bunch of disagreements, maybe that's a sign that we should allow for students to also disagree publicly. If this is really something that people don't want, they won't pass it, and it's just that simple. So I think that we should move forward, like Lauren said before, and approve it and move forward with our meeting.
We're out of time on this agenda item. I have, let's see, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I have 7 people left on staff. And again, if we don't vote, this just isn't on the ballot. Cameron?
Reserve my right to make a motion. What I'm gonna motion to do is to put 2 minutes on time, and then the next person's a motion to vote, and make it be that, and that's it.
Point of information.
So I motion to add 2 minutes.
And then after 2 minutes, no more extending time? Is that, did I hear you?
I didn't have that stipulation, I just want.
Okay.
I'm just
Just
asking
2
you
more
to
minutes.
make us vote on it, and then move on.
Cool. Alright, so I have a motion by Cameron to add 2 minutes to this agenda item, second by Leighton. Are there any objections? Alright, seeing none, we have 2 more minutes and I'm continuing with staff. Chase? Lauren?
Alright, I have a motion to sponsor.
I have a motion to sponsor by Lauren, second by Cameron. Are there any objections? Objection by Leighton. Do you care to state your objection?
All the reasons I've previously stated.
Okay.
Wait a minute,
Yes.
we never voted on Cameron's original motion that Leighton
Yeah,
objected to,
you're
so
right.
don't we
You're
have to
right.
vote on that first?
So, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the community. We just have some stuff to get through this meeting. Lauren?
Yeah.
Do you want to include revise the call to question? If that's the intent that you're trying to do? Okay. Cameron, you seconded. Do you accept that revision? Okay. So I have a motion by Lauren and a second by Cameron to call to question. Are there any objections to call to question? Which means we move directly into a vote and we have no more discussion.
Point of information.
Yes.
Voting on the motion to extend by 2 or voting on the motion to sponsor?
The motion to extend by 2 is passed. This is the motion to sponsor.
We're voting on
It requires, exactly, it requires a 2/3 majority vote. Are there any objections to calling to question? To having to any discussion? Alright, seeing none, we're moving into a vote. All those in favor of sponsoring the Career Center referendum? This means we are in favor of putting it on the ballot. I have 23 in favor. All those opposed? 1 opposed. The referendum passes. And we're moving on to the next agenda item, which is revisiting the REACH Act resolution that was introduced on March 5th. Is there anyone who would like, I'm going to pull up the resolution while I do that. Stefan, you have the floor?
Motion to sponsor.
Okay.
Or adopt.
Motion to adopt. Okay. Hold on. I'm going to get the language in front of us so we can actually see what we're working with.
This is super controversial.
Is that Cameron? Is that a second?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a motion to adopt by Stefan and a second by Cameron.
Point of information,
Yeah.
can we pause just for a second
Well,
so
it's
that
up.
I can,
Yeah. That would be, that's better. Yeah.
going on the speed of light over here, everybody.
Am I going too fast for people? Do people feel like they don't know what's going on? Okay.
Since I was on Slack, do you want me to just say it? Because I have it up right here.
Oh, I'm gonna just
Exactly, you say you're gonna do it.
So this is the language. Thank you so much, y'all. So this is the language behind me. People wanting it read at all? Or are you good at that? It's in the
Can
March.
you do the summary?
Yeah. It's in
Can I do
the
the summary actually?
You want to do the summary?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So, it's basically just like an anti-hazing thing. I don't have most of the details, but we're lobbying for it in DC, this weekend, the EVP office, so, like, it's being supported anyway, so we should just, adopt it. And it's kind of common sense, like, both sides agree with something for once, so, yeah.
Okay. This language is available under the Resolution of SUA Reach Act. This is in the March 5th folder. So we had a motion and a second on the table. Are there any objections? Seeing no objections, the motion passes. And now we're going into funding deliberation. Raphael, would you be able to put the amount that we currently have on the board? Thank you so much.
Raphael, does that include the updated numbers from Equiview with the minutes, all of the numbers possible?
So we're going into formal requests right now. At this point, make a motion to all my remaining minutes.
Okay. And then,
No, is this the one? I mean, it's not the one.
oh, it's not one for it. I suppose we could, but that would require sofa.
So, can we make a motion to move this from the sofa as was discussed at the last gathering of people that wasn't meeting? Yeah. Like move the remaining money to sofa.
What's up?
I don't know about this.
Is there any mechanism for sofa to eat meat? No, alright.
Sorry about taking away you all.
I had an idea. I was
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so proud of you. I'm just like, you already got a lot of praise for this. So much work.
And thank you for during the relationship between the other students and the it's there's like a fight. But I'm really happy. I'm so what I'm banking on for this project is there's so many things that definitely need students to go. I'm gonna buy a food join that.
Thank you so much. Y'all, I'm sorry about the impromptu recess. We back? Cool. We're just pulling up the number. The number is 1,176.04 left in programming for the year. We have money in spring sofa, but that's also money in spring sofa. We don't have money in spring sofa? Yeah, we do. Okay. Okay. African Student Union is requesting $5,125, and the Planetary Health Group is requesting they have a $275 void in their budget.
Point of inquiry, did
Yes.
African Student Union come? Because I don't think they did. They didn't present.
So they were here, they came last week.
Week 9?
Oh. It was week 10. It was in the book. They didn't come? Okay. So that's the number that they're requesting. That's from email. But they didn't come. I mean, yeah. We can fund them if they didn't come, but also like that's a decision for y'all to make. You know what I'm saying? We don't know what this money is going for. We don't know about their event. I can pull up the email that they sent me if that's helpful. You get that out.
Can we respond to them and have them come in?
They need their money this week.
Nikhil, do you remember if ASU came week 10? Do you remember if ASU came week 10?
I can't hear you.
Do you remember if ASU?
She wasn't there.
Oh, you weren't there? Okay.
Week 10 I was.
Oh, yeah,
Yes, David, David, I saw David first, I got you. David?
So my understanding was that, I'm sorry, I wasn't actually there, I had to leave the meeting early, and technically wasn't a meeting, but my understanding was that there was a discussion about moving the remaining money into SOFA. I've already spoken about why I think that SOFA is a good space to do this. So that being said, can I like reverse reserve the right to motion? No. No. All right. That being said, I will be getting on stack again and motioning to move the rest of this money to SOFA. I also think that if a group doesn't show up to like answer our questions about what they're using the money on, they shouldn't get the money. And that sucks. And I'm sorry, but like the point of them coming here instead of just like sending us an email is that we get to be like, hey, are you buying a bunch of plastic water bottles that are against our like resolutions about plastic water bottles? Are you going to be using this to fundraise your own money, which is something that we've objected to in the past? Are you using this to make a profit? And where are you going to be using this money to be, like, where are you fundraising and then putting this money into something else? There's a reason we have funding requests, and I don't like not having that funding request.
Yes.
Sorry, like what's happening? I don't know if I like blinked and missed it, but like the agenda says that we're deliberating African Student Union's funding request. Are we not doing that?
So the African Student Union emailed me and asked for funding. They asked for $5,125. I asked them if they could come to the meeting week 10. They weren't able to make it. They need their money this week. We talked about putting all funding requests to SOFA. And then Stefan just showed me a thing in the bylaws where we can't fund groups that don't come. So that's all the names on the table. Does that make sense?
I can get the specific
I had Leighton on staff, and then I got you and Kim. Alright. Okay.
Thank you. I reserve the right to make a motion. Firstly, I think it's egregious
Guys.
that... Thank you, Emma.
Sorry, y'all.
Firstly, I think it's beyond egregious that $5,000 is what they're asking for, and we still have no idea why they want that money. I think that's outrageous in the first place. Secondly, I think if they couldn't come on week 10, they should have tried to make it up and come this week. So I find that particularly egregious. However, I also really like the idea of moving the money into SOFA and then informing everyone for funding requests to come to Spring SOFA. That way we can centralize our money, make this body more efficient by not having funding requests that take up massive chunks of time, and just generally get funding done in a specialized body that we can all get behind. So after reserving my right to make a motion, I motion to move the remaining programming money into Spring SOFA and tell these two groups to go to SOFA, as well as informing all of our potential funding requests to go to SOFA.
Okay, I got you.
Seconding.
Oh, I'm sorry. They sent me a budget and I'm just trying to pull it up.
Yeah, I was...
But that's not really your point, and I get that. Can you repeat your motion?
The motion was to move the remaining programming money into Spring SOFA and inform all present and future funding requests to go to Spring SOFA.
Thank you. I have a motion to move the rest of the spring programming money, which is $1,174.04, into Spring SOFA, and inform all groups asking for funding, including these two groups, to seek funding from Spring SOFA. I have a second by David. Are there any objections? Objection by Cameron. Could you state your
I
objection?
object. Planetary Health came in and gave a presentation to us, so we should vote and discuss them getting funding. Also, that event is going to be a good one. I know people running the event, and they're putting in a lot of work to do that. I also know one of the professors that's going to be speaking at the event, and they're trying to establish a global health minor at this university, which a lot of other UCs have, and we do not. So I would like to urge you all to decide on moving money to Spring SOFA after we vote on funding Planetary Health, because they presented.
Okay. This is, we're now opening up a new debate. I'll have you on stack for this new debate.
I just want to say that I agree with you, Leighton, 100% in terms of moving the funds to SOFA. But I also wanted to hold a vote whether people wanted to do that or not. So for now, I think maybe the best thing that we can do is just vote on the 275, yes or no. And then we move forward on the next agenda item to talk about whether y'all want to hear funding requests in here or not. If you do decide that you want to hear funding requests, then we will then motion to then move the rest of the programming funds into SOFA and then move from there. That's my recommendation to this space.
Alright, just so you'll know, the stack I had before was, I still had David and Venkatesh on stack if you all want to talk about this new minus stack.
Is this for the amendment?
This is for the motion that Leighton just made that we're now discussing. David?
Motion to call the question.
Okay, I have a motion to call the question by David, which means that we wouldn't vote, we wouldn't discuss this plan to move this full amount, $1,176. Are people following? I feel like I'm talking kind of like this and this because I'm still like tracking it. Are people good? I'm gonna go get it on the board so that this can be more visual. What's that?
One?
Yeah. Okay. So, alright, so this is the amount that we currently have in programming, and that's for the rest of the year. Leighton's motion was to do two things. To tell
Point of information, that number is actually increasing because we have funds coming in from January, December, October. So when we do talk about moving the rest of the money into programming, we have to be specific on what we're saying because the number is going to be increasing.
So my understanding was that it was this number, and does that, if you're talking about the carry forward, does that apply to this year, or does it only apply to next year?
This year.
Okay, alright.
Point of information.
But if I said something else, I apologize for the confusion. Alright, so what just happened was that David motioned to call to questions, that's the current motion on the table, and it's the call to question on this motion. And this full amount is in reference to this number right here. And then I have a second by Leighton to call to question. Are there any objections?
I object because I don't want us to vote on this. I want us to hear, or I want us to debate the planetary health funding request. And then we can worry about paying money into SOFA afterwards.
Sounds good.
And their events is soon, they don't have time to wait for SOFA. So we need to debate their funding request.
Okay. Also, I'm sorry for saying sounds good. That was a judgment call. My bad. I'm not.
You're good.
Okay. So getting that on my end. Call to question is not a debatable motion, so we'll be moving into a vote. All those in favor of moving directly into a vote about this motion? All in favor of calling to question? I have 5 in favor, all those 6 in favor, all those opposed. I have 7 opposed. This requires a 2/3 majority, so we're still talking about this.
Point of information.
Yeah.
Don't we need to vote on the motion before, if we choose to fund planetary health, don't we need to first address this motion by voting on it before we can?
That's true. That's true.
Alright, just putting it out there.
Yes.
So when we were voting on whether we should vote upon this, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
So basically what just happened is that now we're still discussing this. We're still discussing this motion. And we haven't, yes, Ken.
I would like to amend the current motion to fully fund planetary health $275 because it's a small amount relative to the rest of the requests that we get. And I think they deserve the money because they've been working on some of that for a while now. And then we can worry about stuff later.
I also want to say, is that a second?
It is a second.
Alright, I have a motion by Cameron to amend this motion to then fund sanitary health 275, and then tell the actual student union to go to SOFA, and then move the remaining amount to 275. So like 900 something to spring SOFA bill. Second by Layton. Are there any objections? Is everyone following me? I'm sorry if I'm being confused. Okay, seeing no objections, the motion passes. And we will be moving into our last agenda item of the night. Yeah.
I actually want to make one more motion. Regarding what I have said about the money that will be carried forward, could I motion to move that, all of that money into Spring SOFA just to centralize the entire process itself?
I have a motion to move any carry forward that we get back. And that would just be money that we allocated to groups that they did not end up spending. To move any of that carry forward into Spring SOFA. And a second by David. Are there any objections?
Point of inquiry, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
just the language that you use, we gotta be specific. It's money that was used by that wasn't used by organizations. Also, other funds that are still processing, like student registration fees, and other revenue that we get from other events on campus. Just to be clear with that.
Okay. Can you restate your motion with the more specific language?
Of course, I would motion to move all unused money from past quarters, as well as any money gained from events and student registrations that are still processing into Spring SOFA to centralize the entire process.
David, you seconded it, are you? Okay. Alright, so I have a motion by Layton and a second by David to move, I'm gonna try and get this right. Alright, to move any, can you repeat it and then I'll just repeat it because that's about resource.
Sounds good. To move any money not used from clubs in past quarters, as well as any money made from SUA run events and registration fees that will be coming through the incoming funds, or?
Yes.
Okay.
So to move any money left over from past quarters and registration fees that we get in this quarter into program. Now I'm asking for objections. Cool. Alright. You have the floor. This is on that last agenda item of the night, talking about funding first.
Yes, this should go fast since y'all just voted to move all the money into SOFA. So basically, again, we've talked about this for 2 quarters now, and I want to put into implementation this quarter. Basically, we want to clear up the time that we have in SUA to focus more on the political aspects that are happening on campus, like student housing west issues that are going on, updates on the chancellor search stuff happening, what's going on with the housing funds, everything. So basically, I'm asking to get a straw poll of how many members would be interested or okay with no longer hearing funding requests in SUA for this quarter, and moving all funding requests to 2 to 3 SOFA meetings based off of whatever we vote on next. Yeah, so before we do a straw poll real fast, does anyone have any questions about what they're specifically voting on? Yes.
Given that we just moved all funding from programming, isn't this a non-issue considering we could not technically vote on funding requests?
Well, I still want your all's approval because it's democratic. Yeah.
And also we could do funding requests from other pots of money.
Yes.
That's one.
Yes. Any other questions? Okay, so please give me a thumbs up if you are okay with no longer hearing funding requests in SUA this quarter and moving all funding requests into 2 to 3 SOFA meetings that will convene this quarter. This quarter.
Oh, we're in
All right, please raise your hand if you do not agree and you object and you find it to be a problem. Okay, so we'll be moving.
I don't have an objection.
Bella, either way we got it's already.
Yeah,
Now the last.
I just wanted to provide a related comment because on this particular item.
Oh,
I just had a question.
Oh, yes.
What happens when we have like people coming in for like organizing budget or like things like that, if they want to like pull money from our organizing line item for traveling?
So, do you mean the student organizing?
Travel, yeah.
Student organizing travel? We can, so the goal is to hear all funding requests from SOFA, so we can also have SOFA recommend that SUA fund from the student organizing travel, but the goal is to have everything with SOFA. Yeah.
So when we were like chin deep in all of these funding requests over the last couple of quarters, Siglali actually talked to me about potentially making amendments to the SUA bylaws to this front. And we had a good email exchange and I think a little bit of a discussion in SUA Vision Committee, which you all should go to, it's really fun. And as a result, I actually have a proposed draft revision to the SUA bylaws because of course I do. And so part of the amendments that I'm proposing is that we move all of the funding requests to SOFA, like you're talking about, unless there's a specific reason that it needs to come to SUA. And I think that it's important to have that exception and have that exception warranted by I think it's the Vice President of Internal Affairs, which heads SOFA, so that if there is an extenuating circumstance that we just don't know about, that we just can't anticipate, we still have a route where they can come to SUA if need be. Like if there was a problem and people want to contest what SOFA decided because they think that SOFA wasn't fair, they could bring that to SUA. And so I think that having that safety net should be something that we keep in mind.
Yes, let's work together on those bylaws and let's partner up on that. And then if y'all are interested in having 2 SOFA meetings or 3 SOFA meetings, that matters because y'all will be the ones a part of that. Real quick on a straw poll, yes.
What do you mean by having 2 to 3 SOFA meetings? Would you split up funding or would you just like,
Yeah, so SOFA has been operating in the past where like its main goal is to use all of its money to organizations. Now SOFA will be operating as the actual deliberative body and deciding how much each organization gets. So having 2 SOFAs would allow for us to maybe have one on week 2 or 3 and then one on week 4 or 5. Having 3 SOFAs would be extremely, it'd be interesting. Because I don't know how much money we have left at the 3rd SOFA meeting, depending on how they spend the money in the first 2. So I just want to get a show of hands. How many of y'all would be interested in having 2 SOFA meetings in this quarter? Okay, hands down. How many of y'all would be interested in having 3?
I was listening.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, how many of y'all would be interested in having the first SOFA meeting convene week 2, which would be next week? Raise your hand.
Does it give it a
So the reason why I asked for week 2 was because according to the bylaws, SOFA recommendations have to go back to the student government spaces before they can be approved in SUA. That gives it a week lag, which means that the people who are going to be coming in for funding requests, week 2 won't actually get the SOFA money until like week 4-ish. And so if we push it to week 3, then they won't get into week 5, which is only an inconvenience to them. But yeah, week 2 would be pretty early, but yeah. Yes.
When was the original SOFA meeting supposed to be?
Original SOFA meetings are usually week 4.
I have a few people on staff.
Okay.
Natasha?
I just wanted to know if, since I don't know if this was but whatever we did just now, in case of emergency, can a group still come in to SUA, like what happens?
Yeah, so SUA has the ultimate deliberative power. So if SUA decides, no, we actually want to fund this, they can motion to move the money from SOFA back to the programming and then fund from there. Or they can just motion to fund from SOFA. Yeah.
Point of information, I just want to remind us all that the motion that we just all agreed on doesn't allow funding requests. So if we make this decision, it has to be done through a dialogue amongst ourselves. We can't have people coming in and saying, please hear this funding request, even though you all just said you're not going to hear funding requests. So I just want to be clear that there is a technicality there.
Technically there isn't, because it was a straw poll, and this is the
license.
Oh, I got you. Oh, I got you. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Alright, Lauren?
I think if we do it in week 2, we'll have issues getting quorum, and that's not fair to organizations who won't have enough time to get
Building off this previous speaker, I think moving it forward will just cause a lot of problems because I feel like a lot of clubs have planned for week 4, and if they can't make it in week 2, that means they're losing the opportunity to get funding because usually, like, clubs that come first usually can get money because in the end there isn't money. So moving it forward, even though it's more convenient in like planning, just doesn't make sense for planning because like throughout the entire year and like that's kind of been the basis. So it doesn't make sense to change it without having any warning whatsoever. They would have like 5 days to move all their organization to like a standard to be presentable, and I don't think that'd be fair anymore. It'd also be impossible to get warning.
If there's a lag, I think it's important that maybe we like do have 3 instead, and I think it's like, I feel like we should have one like as kind of as soon as possible because those like groups that were planning for funding requests, like this meeting or like next meeting, can like are at least prepared to present and can go then. Like I just think that it like an early SOFA like needs to be an option for organizations.
Emma?
I just want to remind everyone that y'all are going to have to be at these 2 to 3 SOFA meetings, and they are long and they are painful. And like I get it, like yes, we want to give organizations as many opportunities to present as possible, but at the same time, if there are 3, I think that's going to increase the probability that people are not going to show up to them, as in us, because as much as dedicated we are, as dedicated to this space we are still not paid, we are still not being compensated for that time that we're spending, and so like that creates an issue because those meetings are like 3 to 4 hours long, and honestly, like, and sometimes have to come back, like last quarter we had to come back for a second meeting because we couldn't finish, and so if we're saying like, oh, 3 meetings is better for the other students, like that's all well and good, but at the same time, it's like, what's gonna work for us too? Because we deserve to like take ourselves into consideration as well, because we're not being paid for this time that we're spending.
Lauren?
You.
Okay. We are out of time on this agenda item. I have 2 people left on staff. Venkatesh?
Extend time by 5 minutes.
Extend time by 5. Motion to extend time by 5 minutes made by Venkatesh, second by Alexandrina. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we have 5 minutes on this agenda item. Venkatesh?
I just wanted to point out, like, the further it is in the quarter, like, people's workloads start to pick up. That means people won't be showing up to, like, 4-hour meetings, especially when there's, like, midterms, finals, and all the other things being considered. And, like, people will be graduating as well, so I'm thinking that's, like, another thing they'll have to deal with, like, a bunch of other things. So further it is in the quarter, more people are, like, more likely to show up to these meetings, which means even if there are more meetings, they'll be ineffective because there's no one there. And you can't reach quorum, so there's like no point.
Point of personal privilege, we just extended time. If you didn't want to stay for the extra time, please object. Otherwise, please stay. That being said, I have 2 things to say. The first is, I think that as we move to being more of a political body and more of a body that doesn't just do funding requests, I think it's really important for everyone to really reflect and ask, why are they here? Are they here to build their resume? Are they here to just do 2 hours a week? Or are you here to be a student leader? And I don't think that there's a definitive answer to that because we haven't been asking people to do more than just 2 hours a week. But I would encourage everyone to reflect on that because the answer to that question has a lot of implications as to where this space goes. And I think that we have a lot of potential for greatness. So with the somber stuff out of the way, I want to say I think it's also really important that we congratulate ourselves when we do good shit. I think tonight's meeting was really good. I think that, we did a lot of important stuff. It isn't always easy, but we had the important debates, we discussed these issues, and I really think that we should take a moment to appreciate ourselves for doing this.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all for everything that you said. Currently, right now, the feedback that I've gotten looks like, and y'all can tell me if this is not what you want to do, SOFA could be in week 3 and week 5. Is anybody in denial of that? Okay. Is there anybody else that's in denial of that? Disagree. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Again, great meeting you. I know. We're not done yet.
Y'all, real quick, closing remarks and adjournment. I made the announcement about the like inter-UC sustainable action thing. If you're so interested in that, come talk to me. I don't have anything more for you all. I don't know if there's any other closing remarks or adjournment that anybody wants to real quickly. Motion?
Just want to say, just really quick, this is my first meeting, and I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to coming to more meetings, and hope you support me.
Awesome. Yes, we got you. Cool. We'll try to have food here, y'all. Yeah. Oh, and if y'all are interested in planning a student union leadership summit from all student leaders on campus, we're going to be trying to invite Congress people from the U.S. Congress. So if you're interested in getting involved in that planning and stage, please let me know. And yeah, have a good day, y'all. We got a full-time lawyer, y'all.
Meeting adjourned at
That must be about it's a record for this court. It's a record for this court.
I mean, it's only needed for this court. Last year we had a meeting that
Oh, sorry. It's fine to actually understand how much that is. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think $500,000, like, I will never have that much money.